My name is Colm Ryder, for those of you who do not know me. I am an ex-development worker. I always consider myself as a continuing development worker, really, in lots of different spheres, but I am an ex-development worker who spent a lot of time in Yemen, who loved the country, who had many challenges there, but loved every bit of it and lived every bit of it. And I think it's such a fantastic country, and I think you will find it out tonight, where we have a variety of different aspects of looking at Yemen in terms of tourism, in terms of the culture, in terms of the people, in terms of the politics, which of course most people now hear about as bad news on a day-to-day basis. So ahlan wa sahlan, I say a few words in Arabic if that's okay with everybody. Ahlan wa sahlan, كلكم جميعا إلى حد المسا خاصة أن الموضوع في بلاد اليمن. Thank you very much. Shukran, New Zealand. First speaker tonight is Brid Beeler.
Situated at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen is one of the oldest inhabited places on earth. Bordered in the north by Saudi Arabia and to the east by the Sultanate of Oman. It offers a rich blend of landscapes. The rugged mountains and terraced farming of the northern highlands reminds the visitor of the Himalayas. Imagine the rugged Himalayan landscape, where farmers till the narrow terraces by hand and the mountain air is devoid of pollution. Then picture Ireland and Scotland, with castles, round towers, and fortified stone villages, and you have Yemen, the roof of Arabia. It is an enchanted land where craggy mountains soar above lush valleys, warm seas, and vast sand deserts. Medieval villages, seemingly unchanged for centuries, hold comfortably to both cliffside and custom. The Romans, who tried and failed to conquer Yemen in 25 BC, called the place Arabia Felix, or Happy Arabia, because it was blessed with ample resources, pleasant climate, and a prime location at the crossroads of international trade routes. To the west lies the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandab Straits that separates the continent of Africa from the Middle East. To the east lies the famed empty quarter, Arub al-Khali, the largest sand desert in the world, a desert the size of France, Belgium, and the Netherlands combined. To the south, east of the coast of Mukalla in the Arabian Sea, lies the Socotra archipelago, with its unique flora and fauna, reckoned to be the next Galapagos of this century. Yemen is a country steeped in history, dating back to the Safavid Empire, when the Queen of Sheba once ruled this ancient land, and camel caravans traveled north along the old trade routes, carrying frankincense and myrrh, silks and spices bound for the Levant. Now, I've been traveling to and from the Middle East since 1987, and I first visited Yemen in 1991, after the first Gulf War. My husband and I, along with 2 other travelers, got permission to drive from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where we were living at the time, to visit Yemen over a 3-week period. But to our surprise, the Saudi-Yemeni border at Najran was closed. With a compass in hand, accompanied by a map and a smattering of Arabic, we set forth across Arub al-Khali. the empty quarter. We spent that very first night in Al-Buga, a walled city in the midst of the desert. Next day, as we meandered through mountains and valleys, I simply fell in love with this landscape, the people, and the simplicity of life. Given the other immediate problems that Yemen faces, speaking of tourism today may seem somewhat unimportant. However, tourism may prove to be one of the few bright spots in Yemen's future. Much of the basic tourist infrastructure remains, including major hotels, and these could be returned to operation. Once the current situation stabilizes, I expect tourism will emerge again as an important economic sector. Realistically, of course, any major refurbishment of the tourism sector will require foreign investment. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Vincent Durac. I'm a lecturer in Middle East politics in University College Dublin. And the event tonight, to my mind, has been enormously important in raising consciousness about what has been going on in Yemen for the last several years. It's a country that has been mired in conflict and is right now in the middle of one of the greatest humanitarian catastrophes of our times. And what has been significant about tonight's events is that it has brought together a number of people who are concerned enough to invest their time in learning more about what has been going on in the Middle East, and specifically in relation to the Yemeni conflict. My interest stems both from my professional background and also from the fact that I was fortunate enough to visit Yemen some years ago in the course of a research project, and it seems to me to be extraordinarily important that we focus on what is already a disastrous situation, but one which is growing worse on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, and the more that can be done to raise consciousness in relation to this, in my opinion, the better.
Unlike Brid's, dare I say, a poetic presentation, mine is going to be a little bit more nuts and bolts as so-called professor of so-called political science. It's not really a science anyway. We'll have it. Yeah, but nobody needs to be told, but you know, it's sometimes worth reminding ourselves of where we're talking about, and in particular where we're talking about globally, because Yemen, of course, in the Middle East, and I'm not going to make anything of this, but we tend to forget that Red Sea context. But where I really want to begin is by suggesting that the roots of the conflict that has been taking place in Yemen since 2015, if not earlier, lie in the events of 2011 and the aftermath of the uprising that took place in the country, as took place in so many settings across the Middle East. And I was chatting with Nawal earlier, and she asked me where I was going to begin, and I thought 1962 would be good, or possibly the Ottomans, but yeah, that is the 2-hour version. But in a shorthand sense, what we're talking about in many respects is a conflict that flows both from the events of 2011 and from the mismanagement or the failings of the transitional period that followed. Transitional in the sense that what you see is, I guess, almost everybody here probably knows, what you see is the overthrow as a result of this extraordinary popular mobilization, the overthrow of a classic long-standing autocratic president in the person of Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was the dominant figure. And again, those of you who've spent far longer in the country than I have, and my visit was very short, dominated public and political life from the unification of Yemen in 1990 and previously from 1978. You know, these figures, many of whom, not enough of whom, met their ends, so to speak, politically, I stress, in 2011, who had been around for decades. And Saleh, as everybody knows, you know, ruled the country through a combination of co-optation and repression, relying on external sponsorship, relying on a small oil industry, and relying on a clientelistic and patronage sort of approach to public and political life. And again, in a shorthand sense, what you see over the course of 2011, of course missed by the outside world, is the fact that there had been mobilization in Yemen against the regime from different sectors for years before all of this crystallized in 2011. Much again has happened elsewhere, but we don't pay attention to these things in the way that we should. What you do see when those very brave individuals began to protest is that very quickly, in a matter of months in fact, Salah is faced with opposition from just about every strand of political opposition, of political opinion. The initial youth protest movement, again, much as you see elsewhere in the region, quickly and opportunistically joined by opposition political parties, but also by significant regional actors, of course the Houthis, of whom I'll be saying so much more, but also quite often missed in the analysis of the conflict, and foolishly so, the Southern movement, the so-called peaceful Southern movement, which isn't a movement, it's a movement of movements. And again, like so many things in the Middle East, that complexity tends to be missed.
I love you. I love you, I love you, and I love those who love you. And even if they stitched my lips, I will rip them apart only to repeat your name. Because I love you, I love you, I love you, and I love those who love you, and I yearn. I yearn for the day I see you stand on your feet in faith I hold close to my heart. I believe you will because I love you. I love you, and I love those who love you, but what do I know? What do I know, oh people of Yemen? You see, the truth is within my genes, and I belong under the shades of the trees as the sun tries to control all of me. But what do I know? I traveled miles away at the age of 4 to a land I called home. But my heart never approved because something was missing. And upon my eyes I sit above to unfold the truth, this inner beauty. But so gracefully you sit, and you waved hello. You waved hello, but I never had the time to say goodbye. But you redefined in the style of your own, and you walked along simply, the life one designed and polished, with original history lessons that was taught to mankind. But so charming you fall, and you attract the eyes of those who don't know. And as I gazed alongside to the birds that chant early morning, rise, rise, people of Yemen, because your morning shift has begun. Oh people of Yemen, what do I know?
So my name is Amin Atik. I'm a Yemeni Scouts writer, performance artist and an activist. So I was kindly invited to come to Dublin today to perform some of my work. So most of my poetry talks a lot about Yemen, and some of my poems is kind of to raise awareness about the conflict, but also to celebrate the Yemeni heritage and culture, but also to celebrate my identity as a British, Yemeni and Scouse young woman in the UK.
The miracle upon the heaving sea in that night time when we could sleep, dreamt a lifetime of unfolding dreams and that star. I remember, because I remember that star that lit to outshine them all.
I just think it's really, really important, obviously living in the West, as well as raising awareness about Yemen, is that we also celebrate it. And I think that is part of the resistance. The more we celebrate our culture, the more we're actually talking about Yemen in a way that it invites an audience that doesn't know about Yemen to the space. And that is when we start educating each other about the situation in Yemen. But also I always question, if the war ended tomorrow in Yemen, it will take years to rebuild Yemen. So I think part of my responsibility as an artist is to kind of like secure and kind of like celebrate the cultural part and the artistic side of Yemen.
I love you, and I love those who love you. For I am your complexion, and I am the dryness to your nose, and I am the shine to your forehead. But I am the daughter of an Arab, wandering in my own skin, yearning to return home.
So please welcome Nawal Almaghafi.
of all, can I say that it's so wonderful to be in a room full of people who have been to Yemen and who know, have good memories of Yemen, and people who care to know more about what's going on in Yemen. So it's such a pleasure to be here to speak to you about it. So I'm going to give you a bit of a background about how I started reporting on conflict zones. It was in March. So first, I was working for the BBC already, but I used to make feature documentaries, mainly on, feature films in very safe places, let's say. But it was in March 25th, 2015, was it 15? Yeah, when the war began, in the very early hours of the morning, that my husband shook me awake when we were in bed. I'd just come back from a trip to Yemen to visit family, and my parents were in Yemen at the time. They decided to move back. And he woke me up and he was like, Nawal, there's a war in Yemen, war has broken out. I mean, there was already conflict, escalating in Yemen, but the Saudi intervention hadn't begun. And he woke me up to tell me that a 10-country coalition was bombing Yemen. So I remember calling my family, going on the BBC website first of all, and literally all there was on the BBC website was the headline that the Saudi-led coalition had started bombing Yemen, but there was no detail about what was actually going on or the events that led to this bombing campaign. And I remember calling back home. My parents were in Sana'a, in Faj'atan, which was where one of the biggest weapons stores of Ali Abdullah Saleh was based. So it was, one of the main areas that was hit in the beginning of the war. And I remember calling home and I could hear the thuds of the airstrikes in the background, and I could hear the children that lived in our house crying in the background. And when the war first broke out, the electricity was cut off in Yemen. So people in Yemen didn't know what was happening or who was attacking. So I spoke to my dad and he said, what's going on? I have no clue what's going on. And all I could tell him was that a 10-nation coalition was bombing Yemen, but I wasn't sure why, because the details hadn't come through. Now for the next few weeks, I'd call home every single day, a few times a day, and I'd hear about the latest school that's been attacked, the latest hospital that's been attacked, the latest civilian neighborhood that had been attacked. But it was so frustrating to go into work and nothing was being reported on. Now, it's not because my fellow journalists at the BBC, my fellow war correspondents were lazy. It was because the coalition had blocked any foreign journalists from going into Yemen. So even though they were trying very hard to go in, they couldn't go in. So 3 weeks into the war, my father called me, the same father who, by the way, wasn't very up for me becoming a journalist in the first place. He called me and he said, you know what, you have to come here. You have to come and report on what's going on because no one else can get in. And then it hit me that what's even worse than me not being able to show you how beautiful Yemen once was is that children like Mukhtar will never get to see the Yemen that I grew up in and the childhood that I had. So I'm going to show you a video. I have to tell you that it's a very, very hard watch. But it's a piece that I did from Hodeidah in 2016. And I warn you, it is difficult to watch. But I think it's really, really important for us to see what's happening in Yemen now. And hopefully, by you watching this, maybe you can share it with everyone you know and raise awareness as well.
My name is Nawal Almaghafi, and I'm a BBC correspondent and filmmaker. And it's been such a pleasure to come to Dublin to meet all the people who not only have been to Yemen and have beautiful memories from Yemen, but also who care to know more about what's going on. It's so refreshing to meet people that are so eager to learn more about what's going on in Yemen. I've just come back from Yemen. I was there 3 weeks ago, and traveling across the country, I kept seeing just how beautiful Yemen is. And I'm heartbroken that the pictures we show people on TV are not that of the beauty of Yemen, but of the misery. So it was incredible to see Brid show just how stunning Yemen is and tell people about the different things you can do in Yemen and the different tourist attractions. I loved that part of the event. Celebrate the culture of Yemen, the beautiful dancing and the music. I haven't seen that side to Yemen, neither in Yemen in my travels in the last 5 years since the war started, or abroad. So it was incredible to bring those two elements together. and then just speaking to everyone about the politics, about what they can do to help Yemen has been really refreshing.
Enough is enough. What Nawal has shown is that people are dying, children are dying. Enough is enough. Raise this awareness, please, to your MPs, to your colleagues, to your friends. Thank you.